to Haiti.
And I'd like to bring Maria Hinojosa into the conversation. Maria, I wanted to ask you if you could talk about your experiences in reporting on the continuing now several years of reporting on the problems at the U.S. border. But also this, not only the racial aspect of U.S. policy when it comes to asylum seekers, but there's also a political aspect. As we know, for instance, during the 1980s, Nicaraguans were welcomed, granted asylum, while Salvadorans and Guatemalans were denied asylum by the United States because the United States wanted to expose and condemn the Sandinistas at the time. I'm wondering your sense of how this is playing out, both the racial aspects and the political aspects now.
So, Juan, it's great to be with you, and Amy and Ghislaine as well. Look, Juan, it hasn't been years that I've been covering this. I've been covering this for decades. And, when I think about everything that Ghislaine just talked about, the point is that this country, the United States, has a narrative that it lives by that says that we are an immigrant-loving country and that we love and accept refugees. And what we are saying, journalists, activists on the ground, is that that narrative is not true. And what we are seeing is, in fact, it's ugly to say it, but white supremacy in the context of refugees and desperate people. So what did I see, Juan, when I was down in December in Mexico and then in Colombia on the border with Panama? Juan, I have reported about this, again, for decades, but I had never had the chance to be on a caravan. And when I got to the caravan, the United States, the mainstream media, our colleagues talk about the caravan as this scary, frightful thing. In fact, Donald Trump raised this whole specter of the caravan. But how many U.S. government officials, human rights officials have been with the caravan so that they can see what I saw? It is a caravan of love. It is a caravan of solidarity. It is the place when you are traveling through Mexico, if you are Black, as increasingly the migrants and refugees are, the caravan is the only place that you will feel safe. These immigrants, migrants, and refugees are the smartest people when they decide to join a caravan. The fact that the United States mainstream media and the government has chosen to portray the caravans as filled with scary, terrible people who are going to force their way onto the border, it's not true. That's not what they're doing. They are exactly as the Ukrainian refugees are right now. They are desperate, and they are looking to a country that says that they will accept them. Now, just very quickly, last night I was finally able to get in touch with Udi, who is from Nigeria. And he left me a message last night. I said, just bring me up to date. He did finally make it into the United States, but he was held for 4 months in a detention camp. This is a young man who, when I saw him in the jungle, he was like, I got this. We're going to do this. I'm going to, the message he left me said, I don't even want to think about what I've been through. It has been so terrible, so horrific. And the worst part of his travels has been being in the United States in an immigrant detention camp and the disrespect that he had to feel. And finally, as Ghislaine was saying, what this government is doing, a government that says that it appreciates refugees, that has a president that will hug a little Ukrainian girl, what they did to the Familia Felix in our story was that they lied to them. And the U.S. government, Border Patrol and ICE, told them that they were going to be taken to Miami. And when the doors of the plane opened, they had been lied to. They were sent back to Haiti, a country they haven't lived in for over a decade. So the pleas that we have, people say, oh, Maria, you're so obsessed with migrants and refugees. That's because you're an immigrant yourself. You're so Mexican. And it's like, no, I'm obsessed with the capacity that this country has for inhumanity, and specifically watching how that inhumanity is being thrust on people who are Black and simply seeking refuge.
Maria, I mean, the fact that you gave a voice to people is what the mainstream media is doing right now with Ukrainians. It is a model of how all refugees should be treated. So I wanted to go to your reports for the series you did where you met this Haitian family, the family Felix, in the Mexican state of Oaxaca, as they made their way north with a migrant caravan. The Felix family, as you said, fled Haiti over a decade ago after the horrendous earthquake that killed some 300,000 people. They resettled in Brazil until they were once again forced to flee, this time to the U.S.-Mexico border. So this is a clip from Latino USA called The Moving Border, even further south, where the family tells you about their experience crossing through the Darién Gap, a notoriously dangerous, dense jungle that stretches across the Colombian and Panamanian border.
Comemos leche en polvo y chocolate en polvo. Así, y beber el agua del río. Vimos muchas personas muertas ahí.
Sí, nos vimos como tres.
The Felix's children tell me they saw dead bodies in the jungle, people who looked like them, but they had to keep going. Eventually, they were detained by Panamanian police and sent back to Colombia. So they had to do the unthinkable, start all over again and cross back into the Darién jungle.
So in January, over 2 months after you said goodbye to the Felix family in Oaxaca, you received the message from the mother asking you to call her.
Buenos días.
Videlín.
Amor.
Ay, Videlín, ¿qué pasó?
Yo no sé.
¿Qué pasó?
Yo no sé.
Qué cosa más horrible, Videlín, qué cosa más horrible.
Llegamos allá, duramos como 15 días en la prisión y de ahí nos colocaron en avión en Texas y nos regresaron aquí en Haití.
Videlín and her entire family is now in Haiti. 10 years after she escaped the devastation of an earthquake that destroyed everything that she had worked for, after birthing her 2 youngest children in the Dominican Republic, after living in South America for years, after crossing the Darién jungle twice, she and her family made it to the U.S., but 15 days later, the Biden administration deported them back to Haiti.
That's Maria Hinojosa's report called The Moving Border. It is so moving, Maria. And if you can talk about what the actions have meant, because as you talk about this caravan of hope and of love, it's the immigrant rights movement that has forced this action that's expected to be announced today, ending Title 42, which has used the pandemic as a way to prevent so many immigrants. We certainly haven't heard this in the case of Ukraine, but coming into the United States or being detained once they do.
You know, Amy, what I'm hoping, but I have not so much of it. This was a perfect opportunity, in fact, for the Biden administration to completely switch everything up. This is a moment where the Biden administration could say, we're changing everything now because we are going to be committed to what we say we are. This is a moment where the Biden administration could not only get rid of Title 42, stop MPP, reorganize the Border Patrol, because we all saw with our own eyes Border Patrol officials on horses with whips on Black people. So we cannot be gaslit upon what we are living. Sadly, it looks like the Biden administration is more interested in appeasing to people who are afraid of migrants and refugees and Black people. And our job as journalists is to say, look at the treatment of Ukrainian refugees, look at the treatment of Honduran, Salvadoran, Guatemalan, Haitian, African migrants and refugees. And there has to be one way to treat all humanity. So I'm feeling quite desperate. You know, Videlín and I are in touch. She's desperate to get help. She says that now that she's in Haiti, she's terrified for her 2 young girls because it's so unsafe. So, Amy, for me personally, as a human being, this is ripping into my heart. As a journalist, I'm just like, I'm going to keep at it. I'm not going to stop. And I'm going to demand accountability, because what we are seeing is not just the suffering of Ukrainian refugees, but people on our side of the continent. And they need love. And they need that hug from Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, both of them, to say, we welcome you. We see you and we welcome you. And thank you, Amy and Juan, for recognizing the journalism and for allowing me to get a little emotional, because, hey, if you lose all your emotion, then what good are we as journalists?